I want to make some more comments, observations on this voynich manuscript that has so far been unable to be deciphered. This here is a page where, as I understand it, the manuscript itself is about 6 by 9 inches, which is about this size right here. Now, that's kind of a small book for us because we're like 6 feet tall. This would be more of the size of a manuscript that we would use, which is larger because it would be easier to do. Now what I'm wondering about is how come this vellum here, or paper, why would it be folded? It's 6 by 9 inches small. That's a fairly good book. It's kind of, well, a little bit dry, but it's alright book. But anyway, I'll give you a size comparison. I wonder why they have 6 sections of the book. Why not just have 6 pages? Now, people have tried to decipher this, and I don't know that much about it. That's what I'm trying to stay away from, so I will make mistakes here about what I do know and don't know. One thing that we do know is that it was written in very small script. Okay, even some of the, like you can see a castle right here. Okay, look, there's a castle. And you can see different writing, labeling all over everything. The thing about the writing and the labeling is that there's no mistakes in it. Now, even if you'll look at the outline here, these little tiny lines, whatever made them was a master artist, and the guy only did, or thing only did it once. Now my premise is, I don't think a human did this. I think this was a researcher who came from somewhere else, maybe a visitor that left this book here. I mean, we just don't know. Now, why would the book have all of these fold outs like this? Well, what is a fold out in our society? It's a map. And I believe right here this is a star map. And for some reason, oh shit. For some reason they needed, now that's an entryway or an exitway into something. I don't know. And that looks like a little face, as you can see. And he's labeled too. But something very articulate made this manuscript, and we have to put ourselves in the mind of the maker. What we have here is a lot of what look like white women, all generic, and a lot of stars. I don't see any children. I don't see any males. We've seen one man with a weird looking hat and a crossbow, so we figure it must have been done by somebody in that age, or it's a big giant hoax. Well, even if it was a hoax, somebody spent a whole hell of a lot of time making this thing. Now what we can do today is, we know it's in 6 by 9 inches. We know that it's in color, so whoever wrote it meant for it to be seen in color, could see in color, and I'm saying not human. Also, it's written in a language that's made to be understood by somebody, so it's a common language somewhere. It's in book form, which means that whatever did it had 2 hands, maybe smaller, probably a lot smaller, to do all this really, really fine detail work. There are no mistakes in this. There's no corrections. See, like I did right here, I was writing down my notes. I put down patterns, and then I erased it, or crossed it out with my pen, and wrote it right here. But if you'll notice from what I've seen of this codex or manuscript, there is no crossed out marks or whatever it is. No corrections. The parchment needs to be carbon dated. We can do that to determine. We assume it's been done by someone in the 1500s or somewhere back then. This would tell when it was done. Also, a electron microscope could show us if there are any imperfections, spores, like the Shroud of Turin, what that was made of, and if this parchment was common at the time of when they think it was done. This is done a lot to determine accuracy of relics, to make sure that they aren't getting screwed. We also need to establish the writing instrument. Now, if this is done in the 1500s, what did they have? Did they have just a ink quill? Damn it. Go back to where you were. Did they have just an ink quill? Look at the fine work all the way around. Did a pen do that? And what did it? Was it a... Usually in the writing instruments in the old, and I'm not an expert on that at all, but they tended to flow unevenly. You would start your flow and your pattern would be heavy, and then it would thin out as the ink thinned out. Well, this doesn't show any of that. And this was written in a language, so it was meant to be read by others. This, I believe, is a map. It's a directional map that had to be opened for it to be of any use. Now, as a researcher, we have to look at who, what, why, where, when, and how. We have to think, okay, this guy was, the owner was very methodical, and the pictures were drawn before the text was put in. That means that he spent a lot of, whatever did spend a lot of time putting in the pictures, and then the text was done afterwards, so there was a lot of time done in that. And it appears to me that the writer was right-handed, but that really doesn't matter. And there was a lot of plants that have been collected, like a botanist. Well, if this were a researcher, say a non-human researcher, because everything we look at is frustratingly similar, but totally alien. But if he was a researcher, he would, I'll say he, would have the dates and the places that these plants came from. So we can start to look for patterns on that. And what these researchers need to do is put aside their professional careers and their egos and open their minds to what could be. Yes, it could be all a hoax. It could be a total bunch of bullshit. I don't know. It's an interesting mystery. But to me, this looks like a space map. And this looks like a way in or out of a dimension, maybe. And the white women, we don't know their size. We don't know their scale. They aren't doing anything, but they're generic women as far as they're not talking, they're not bitching, they don't. Women are emotional. We see women in the circular deals here. Now look right here. Look up here. if you'll notice, the circle around here is almost totally perfect. Okay, but there's no line. And then after the little blue dot dealies, there's names all the way around. Names or something all the way around here. Now, names or writing would not be in there unless there was a reason for it. Whoever did this was very meticulous. So those are some of the things we have to look at. And Yale needs to sacrifice a little bit of this just to see if the vellum or paper is from our world or what it is. We have the technology to do that. And then to analyze the ink and analyze with an electron microscope the ink strokes and see if we can find any fingerprints or whatever else they look for in something like this. So that's just my observations on this really cool mystery. I hope they solve this one day too. And I just turned 50 today, and I feel very old. So God bless you all, and keep an open mind on things.